1960s, women have made great strides toward equality in the USA. The 14th Amendment granted women and minorities equal rights, and the Equal Pay Act guaranteed equal pay for equal work. But problems still persist today because discrimination has prevented these laws from truly creating equal rights. The Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women Treaty was proposed in 1979 by the United Nations General Assembly. So this was about 10 years after the 1960s Civil Rights Movement. The treaty sought to eliminate institutional discrimination against women everywhere, like all over in every single nation. Discrimination against women is harmful to everyone, which is why the USA should ratify the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women Treaty. With the great advancements that women have made in the USA, some may believe that discrimination is no longer a problem. Unfortunately, discrimination against women is a huge problem, even in the USA. One of the most obvious pieces of evidence is the wage gap, and I have a poster here that illustrates that. So, the earnings of women compared to men. This one is women as a whole, and they make 94% of what the average man makes in general. And once they get to retirement age, they'll end up having made only 70% of what a man makes. And that difference is huge, much more for women of color. African American women only make 67% of what a man makes. And Latino women, it's even worse, they make 57% of what a man makes in an average year. There's that. And this comes from Newman in his book, Sociology, the Architecture of Everyday Life. So, that turns out that women make about $2 million less than the average man. So the Fair Pay Act of 2007 swooped in and it attempted to correct that wage discrimination. And it would do that by requiring jobs to compensate employees based on the values that they provided. So this would prevent companies from paying lower wages to certain jobs simply because they're dominated by females. For example, a plumber with limited training can make just as much as a nurse with lots of college. So the nurse goes through college and she's providing an excellent source of health care. They do lots of work, but it's traditionally dominated by women, and therefore it's not really paid fairly. Plumbing is traditionally dominated by men, and therefore it's compensated very well. The Fair Pay Act was thrown out, however, and Obama was able to pass down a cut-down version of the same law in 2009, which basically made it easier for women to file complaints in the case of wage discrimination. This doesn't really help us because if it's an institutional problem, that means it's prevalent everywhere, and one case isn't going to be able to cut down all the discrimination that's going on. Another obvious piece of evidence is the media. If you open up any magazine or watch any commercial, the chances are you're going to see women in sexually alluring positions selling every type of product. According to Newman, the author of Sociology, Exploring the Architecture of Everyday Life, the average American woman is 5'4" and 140 pounds. The average fashion model is 5'11" and 117 pounds. I have a poster here. This is just magazines that I found laying around in my house. Right here, you can see these two little girls are typecasted because their play has to do with their image. They're dressing up, they're looking pretty. They're doing groovy things. Here you can see the little boy with the gun, and he's typecasted as violence, war. You know, there's nothing here to say that the man has to be judged by his image as well. Here is a car magazine, and this woman here is just an object. She is just as much of a decoration as the car. She's not pictured here as a person. She's pictured here sitting in the car as just a visual aid. This isn't really considering like that she's a human being. She's here just to be looked at. Same here, just an outfit. This woman is modeling a sweater, and for some reason she's not wearing any pants or a bra. And the title here, Sinful, is implying that she's sexy, and apparently that's also sinful. Here we have a naked woman laying on her belly in a subservient position, and she's selling first aid products, which is very interesting to me, that she needed to be naked for that. She needs medical attention. Here is another car one. As you can see, the men here, they're doing things like driving. They're wearing regular clothes, t-shirts, jeans. They're not really here to be looked at, but they're using these vehicles for their function. They're using them for their function. The women are standing next to them, looking pretty, having absolutely no purpose other than to wear short dresses and show off their boobs. So, the message that these images is teaching to both men and women is that women are objects. It shows little girls and boys that the most important thing about a woman is the way that she looks. More disturbingly, the objectification of the women is also the first step towards violence against women. Objectification of women is not only a problem that affects girls. As explained by Myers in Psychology in Real Life, gender is not the same as sex. Gender is traits and behaviors that we expect from a man or a woman. It's not something that we're born with. The image of women as subservient sex objects and the portrayal of them as the weaker sex makes definition of masculinity become the complete opposite. So if you've ever noticed, some of the worst insults that you can call a man is a sissy, a girl, a fairy, or pussy. So this kind of attitude has led men to put too much value on qualities in excess, which only lead to violence, such as strength, power, independence, and toughness. These are manly qualities, but when used too much, it just leads to violence. According to Jackson Katz, who is a leading voice in anti-sexism, male activism, men are responsible for 85% of murders, 90% of violent assaults, 95% of serious domestic violence, 95% of child sexual abuse, and 99.8% of rape. So unfair and distorted gender roles are responsible for the image of masculinity equating with violence. It's significant to point out also that the majority of violence committed by men is also committed on men. Therefore, it really should be our top priority for men as well as women to destroy these overblown roles in masculinity and femininity. That's not the only way that discrimination against women affects men. Women are our wives, our mothers, our sisters, our friends, our co-workers, our fellow human beings. And if that's not enough, consider these statistics. According to the Single Parent Center, there is 14 million single parents in the USA today. That means that 21.6 million of our future generation is in a single parent home. How many of those are headed by women? 83.1% is headed by women. So women have fewer opportunities, less earning potential for men, but they're most often responsible for raising the future generations to come, whether those are boys or girls. So it's hard to argue that women shouldn't have equal rights when you consider those facts. Some might say that women are born more emotional, sensitive, and nurturing than men. And some people believe that females don't naturally embody the traits of the leader that you would expect like men do. Those traits would be assertiveness, aggressiveness, power, all traits that you would expect normally a man to have because of their gender roles. And if men are natural leaders, it stands to reason that they would be placed in higher paying positions. But if you believe that, you believe that inequality exists because of biology and not because of any inequality that we have created with our gender roles. Those beliefs have actually been proven wrong. Advancements in the fields of psychology, biology, and sociology has shown us that men and women are very similar biologically, except for some very small differences. It's culture that really dictates the major deviances that are between men and women. Tell me whether you're male or female, and you tell me almost nothing, says psychologist David Myers. Your opposite sex, in reality, is your very similar sex. So according to Newman, the author of Sociology, women's attitudes actually reflect their culture's expectations and gender roles, and they're not biologically determined at all. So what should we do about the inequalities in the USA? There were 192 countries who are members of the United Nations. 192 countries, including the United States. In 1979, the United Nations General Assembly introduced the treaty called the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. The treaty would incorporate the equality of men and women into the legal systems. It would abolish laws that discriminate against women, and it would adopt laws that would prevent discrimination. So the wage gap would be taken care of by this treaty. Surprisingly, there were 8 countries that actually refused to adopt this treaty, which seems to be beneficial to everyone. Those countries were Tonga, Sudan, Qatar, Nauru, Iran, Palau, Somalia, and the USA. So ratification of this treaty would help to eliminate discrimination like never before. Discrimination affects everyone, not just those being discriminated against. So it is paramount that the USA ratifies the treaty. And afterward, we will all be able to move forward as one.